What is the need for sex, if not the urge to alleviate the pain caused by the instinctual necessity to reproduce? Animals will go through all sorts of trouble in order to copulate, even if it means risking their own lives. Let's take humans, the archetype of sentience, for example. Sex is so primordial to us that it takes hold of a person's ability to think rationally. When someone comes into contact with their subject of attraction, they stop seeing the subject as the amalgam of flesh, blood, bones, waste, bacteria, viruses, ideas, traumas, and behaviors and aspirations that individuals are, to focus only on that which represents genetic fitness, like big breasts, large backsides, healthy skins, and harmonious symmetrical faces. And thus begins a period in which the subject must be won over and dominated by the predator. If domination is achieved, so to speak, the predator and the subject will experience a period of intense hormonal burst that will draw them physically and psychologically together, leading eventually to which, in turn, can lead to an offspring, which is sex. If the intercourse generates an offspring, then an organism's true raison d'etre has been reached. Humans, even though possessing the ability to see behind this evolutionary mechanism, cannot and do not want to reject it, but why should they? Sex is the exchange and contact of fluids between two or more beings, which also means the exchange of viruses and bacteria between them. In such an act, one exposes themselves to all sorts of risks, including the risk of contracting a lifelong STD. However, the biggest risk is the contact with another being themselves. Since humans are predators, the subject of sexual desire is just that, a subject. So what happens if said subject does anything that goes against the predator's desires? The predator will keep its subject through aggressive power and dominance, just like a lion fights tooth and nail to keep the meat just hunted down. Thus, we see individuals in relationships who fall victim to others who once said they loved them. If there is a valued subject or prey, other predators will compete for it, and as such, many die in killing the name of love. Underneath all this lies the endgame of evolution. We must procreate. That's where the main problem stems from. What is so good about life that compels any so-called rational creature into bringing another creature into it? When all of life comes down to birth, growth, reproduction, and death, and lots of suffering in between, why partake in such foolish action? Why do we choose to perpetuate the cycle of life and death? Is it because the good in life outweighs the bad? Or is it because we are in fact irrational animals who are guided by instinct? Let's tackle the idea that the good in life outweighs the bad. Would a minute of the worst pain imaginable justify a following minute of the best pleasure imaginable? If one would say yes, they would have to ignore the innate difference between pain and pleasure. Pain moves us way more than pleasure because pain is an immense discomfort, evolutionary designed to override our rationality, but pleasure is just a momentary escape from pain. 1 second in excruciating pain feels like an eternity, whereas 1 second of pleasure would hardly be remembered. One could live decades in pleasure, having all their needs met, only to have it all be invalidated or overshadowed by one tragic evening. A son that has been killed, a brother who died of overdose, a father who just found out he has cancer, a mother lost to a car crash, a loved wife whom they discovered to have been cheating on them for years. A life of pleasure will not take away the hurt from those tragic evenings of unimaginable pain. The same way one could live decades in pain and one evening of pleasure would not take away the hurt from a life of suffering. Even if one says that life is worth it regardless of such a fact, why would they impose such conclusions on their offspring with no right to choose if they weren't in actuality just irrationally justifying the cycle of life perpetuation and acting on an instinct, since their offspring could have a different opinion? Well, the bad in life doesn't outweigh the good. In fact, our instincts outweigh our rationality. Because we're animals, and as such, the backbone of our existence is the same as any other, and sex supersedes any reason, and through pain we procreate. Sex also causes the following situation. If animals exist in order to procreate, they will be valued by nature on the grounds of such capacity. In other words, survival of the fittest is the game. Those who are genetically fit will thus gather more resources of all kinds, be it sexual partners, more friends, or more opportunities in general, since our brains release many feel-good hormones in the presence of the genetically fit individuals, making them come across as more intelligent, competent, and desirable, the so-called halo effect. This flies in the eyes of those who are perceived as genetically fit, but not in the eyes of those who are not. If one happens to be born lacking the features deemed by their species as genetically fit, they're doomed to a life of second-class existence, where they experience obstacles to success, as well as rejection, bullying, and even physical aggression, due to an innate aspect they have no control over, which in turn hurts them, just generating bitter and miserable individuals who are brought here against their will. Looks do matter for animals. Why should we support an irrational sexual drive that's so powerful to the point it manipulates our preferences towards the genetically fit individuals, regardless of the existence or not of the intention to copulate? When having procreative sex, most will not consider the likelihood of their offspring being on the side of the genetically unfit. They take it for granted that their genes must be healthy and a good addition to the gene pool, when it may very well be not.
All in all, sex is just a tool designed by evolution to enslave us and to keep a system of unnecessary pain and suffering that, in the end, is utter bullshit.